Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining Campbell Scientific as we explore how you can utilize cloud-based data in hydrology. I'm your host, Aspen Nielsen. Joining me today is our expert panel, Scott Boers and Tyler Loudenklaus. Scott, Tyler, can you take a moment to introduce yourselves?
Hey everyone, I'm Scott Boers. I manage the U.S. environmental sales team here at Campbell Scientific. I have 15 plus years in the hydromet space, specifically with flood warning, dam safety, and hydrology.
Thank you, Scott. And Tyler?
Thanks, Aspen. My name is Tyler Laudenclass. I am a sales engineer at Campbell Scientific in the environmental market. I take care of all the clients in the Pacific Northwest and also the Dakotas. And I've been with Campbell for about 5 years, and I've been dealing a lot with this hot topic of water management and water districts and water resources.
Thank you, gentlemen. Today, we are going to be discussing how hydrologists, irrigation districts, and water users alike can utilize cloud platforms to optimize their operations. First, we will discuss the unique challenges that hydrologists and water managers face. Then, we will discuss how you can utilize advancements in technology to improve your data and operations. From there, we will use real data to show you how you can integrate Campbell Cloud with your existing setup. Finally, we will end by answering any questions that you drop into the Q&A. Before we move further with our webinar, we have a few guidelines for our audience today. Please keep your microphones muted during the entire presentation. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please click on the Q&A tab at the top of your screen. Using the Q&A tab, you can submit any questions to our experts. At the end of our live demo, we will have the time to answer your most burning questions. Without further ado, let's get started. Tyler, can you tell me about the types of challenges that hydrologists and water managers face?
Sure, Aspen. So right now, water obviously has always been a hot topic, but it's even more so now. And there's a lot of increased public pressure, especially from state entities, to kind of collect and monitor and get real-time data. And this pressure is coming from how are they utilizing their water resources? You know, historically, they've had little districts and they've kind of been almost private in some regard. But right now, that's not cutting it because they really need to have a holistic approach to see how they're utilizing the water resources that they have. And especially in the western states, where they depend a lot on their fresh water from the snowpack, all of this hydrologic monitoring is related to the recharge of the underground water tables, to when they get runoff into the open rivers and canals and everything. And they really need to get more insight on actual data. And this is going to really help them because if they can develop trends over time and compare it with historic trends, they're going to be in a much better position to really predict how to utilize these resources efficiently and just get more out of it. And it's going to be very helpful also for the public. Another pressure too, you know, and this goes, you know, nationwide for sure, is going to be for flood warning, right? They're going to need to, you know, for safety measures as well. So that's a really big discussion right now, and we're posed to have a lot of solutions to cater to this market.
Thanks, Tyler. You mentioned some of the challenges. How have water managers overcome this? What's the solution?
Well, Campbell Scientific is really poised because we have a lot of different solutions to really solve these problems. I'll first focus on the actual sensor solutions, and then I'll move into the software solutions and how we bridge that gap. So really, we have, you know, a few different sensors that we have. You know, we have our range view, just like in the slide that we're seeing here. This is our non-contact radar water level sensor. We also sell pressure transducers called the CS451. We also sell a bubbler. And really, these sensors are all trying to get at the same metric. They're trying to measure the parameter of water level, right? And with measuring the water level, what you can then do is if you have two different, you can really think of it as two different approaches as far as the data acquisition. So you have the sensors that I've just discussed, but you're going to need a data acquisition to log the data and then transmit the data remotely and then derive more useful information, correct, right? So you can think of it in two different parts. So we have the sensors we've discussed. now we have two different approaches as far as the data acquisition. We're known, traditionally for this general data logger, right? And that's nice because that allows you to have multiple sensors. It allows you to hook all kinds of things up to it. And then the logger will internally record the data. It gives you a lot of flexibility, to program the data logger. And then you can post-process that data with local software, but really where everything is going now is utilizing the cloud, right? And another data acquisition device that only uses the cloud is called our Aspen 10. This is what we call our IoT, Internet of Things device. And this is kind of it's the size of like a 16-ounce glass. And it really is an all-encompassing just data acquisition system, ready to go, right? And it only supports one sensor. So that's the two data acquisition approaches. But really utilizing the Campbell Cloud, where you can send either data loggers or the Aspen 10, which you have to use with Aspen 10, the cloud, it'll all be pumped to the cloud. And then that really allows you to easily manage and then you have that flexibility to get more important information such as CFS, your flow rates, your water level, your acre feet per day. It is all customizable. So that is really the solutions that are available today, and they work very well.
Tyler, what are the benefits of using a cloud-based system over a traditional software-based solution, or even manually making water decisions?
The big advantage with the cloud, there's so many. Well, I'll touch on a few of the most important ones. Cost. Typically in the old way, when they would automate this information, they would typically have, general purpose data loggers, the full systems. They would all have this information put back into a central server that they locally hosted. And that comes with a lot of increased costs, right? Because you're going to have to hire full-time, maybe multiple people to, update the server, keep the server going, make sure it's all communicating properly. It's programmed, it's updated. There's a lot of cost wrapped up into that. And so the cloud is much more manageable and it would be just much cheaper to and streamlined to do it that way. So there's cost. The flexibility of the cloud and really the management of networks are another huge advantage to the cloud. The cloud's going to allow you to easily incorporate all these assets and devices, and then you're going to be able to manage the network more easily. And then it gives you more flexibility to visualize the data. And that's really important, right? They're going to be able to create custom dashboards and really customize how you're viewing all this information so it's useful for you and your organization. And so the cloud is just much more user-friendly to incorporate that visualization, when you compare it to the other older solutions that are out there. And it's going to really aid in making, real-time decisions with the cloud. So those are some, and also you're going to have security. Our cloud also incorporates, there's no paywalls as far as unlimited users, API calls, unlimited data storage. And another big advantage too is it allows you to incorporate third-party data, which is awesome. You can eventually bring in third-party forecasting, and you can really fine tune it to even incorporate. And we're also, if you have any ideas as far as our end users, Campbell is always going to keep the ethos of being open-ended. That's what we're known for. And so if you even have sensors that we don't currently support with our Aspen 10, for example, our data loggers usually support all that already. But if you have like sensors that you want to incorporate with the Aspen 10 device, we're accepting a request. And we're even looking into doing that as well, to write a recipe and incorporate that. And so that's the huge advantages of the cloud and how all this data will be merged into one repository.
Thanks, Tyler. With that, it's a good time to turn the time over to Scott. Scott, can you show us how Campbell Cloud can improve water management?
Sure. Thanks, Tyler and Aspen. So right now, everyone can see our landing page for Campbell Cloud. I'm going to take a few minutes to kind of go over the nomenclature, how to navigate. My goal out of this is to give everyone a high-level overview of how to navigate our cloud platform and how to put it to use. That way you can, leverage the 90-day free subscription, play on your own, and start off using the software. As always, though, this will be more high level. So if you want to have a more detailed demonstration or demo, please feel free to reach out to us. So here's the Campbell Cloud. We're at the Stations and Networks page. Some nomenclature here on our left is our application menu. So these are all the different types of applications that you can use to leverage to alert, disseminate data, dashboards, data explore. As Campbell Cloud continues in its development, we'll see additional applications here for our end users to use. At our top menu bar here, we have the organizational dropdown. So the key advantage of this is you can share your organization with other organizations. So if you have partner agencies and things of that nature, you can easily share your data at a security level privilege so you can control what they have access to without having to manage multiple sign-ins, usernames, and logins. We also have the organizational settings dropdown. So this is where you would manage your users, your security groups, distribution groups, and also our built-in subscription manager. So all of that is easily accessed within Campbell Cloud. And as Tyler mentioned, with your subscription, you get unlimited users. Continuing on, we have the alerts dropdown. So if you have any active alerts, it will bring it to your attention here within the dropdown. We have the help dropdown. So we have an online help document. It's constantly being updated. So if you ever get lost, please reference that. And again, the API documentation, because with your subscription, your basic subscription comes a free API. And finally, we have your user menu dropdown. Here you can control your personal settings, what you view, what your landing pages are. The one thing I always like to point out is the submit feedback. We take feedback extremely seriously here at Campbell Scientific. So please, as you're using the application, leverage the submit feedback tool. We read it, we implement it. So I just always like to point that out to people. Okay, so here we are at the Stations and Networks. To give you an idea of kind of the architecture behind the scenes of how things flow up, we're going to start at the asset level. So what an asset is a device that pushes data to Campbell Cloud. This organization has several assets here that we can manage. Currently, all of our modern data loggers are pushing data to Campbell Cloud via MQTT, secured MQTT. That includes our CR300 series, our CR6 series, CR1000X and XE, and then as Tyler mentioned, our IoT Aspen 10. Let's just click on one of these assets to get a little bit more information. So this is the asset page, and we can see all the measurements. So measurements are, the sensors that you're pushing to Campbell Cloud. The point that I want to make here, it's really important to identify what your measurement properties are. You're going to hear me say measurement properties and measurement classifications throughout this. And this is where we can leverage some of the really unique tools of Campbell Cloud for disseminating and managing your network and organization. We're going to look real quick at this stage sensor. So we have a measurement that's being sent from this asset, discharge and stage, so two measurements, and we classify them. Okay, this is a volume measurement. It's cubic feet per second. This is a stage height. It's in feet, right? Once you have these classifications set, it allows us to unlock a whole new world of how you can disseminate and manage your data within Campbell Cloud. All right, so we'll go back to the asset summary here. So we have assets. Assets are pushing data to a station. Oops, that's always fun to do in a demo. All right, so assets are pushing data to a station. And at that station, you can have multiple assets. So with those multiple assets, give me one sec to load here. There we go. And assets live at multiple assets of the stations, and a group of stations is called a network. So you can manage your networks in any way that you see fit. So a network could be a drainage basin, it could be a specific geographical region, or it could be whatever you feel like. A group of stations or a group of networks is your organization. So the concept is assets pushed to a station, a group of stations makes up a network, and a group of networks is your organization. All right, so now that we have kind of the back end here, let's go to Boulder Creek watershed. So let's go to an actual individual network. So here on the network, some of you may be familiar with this if you're familiar with Colorado. We have four stations that are part of this network. And geographically, we have Boulder Creek right here. We also have the St. Vrain Creek, or sorry, Left Hand Creek, and they flow to this confluence here and create the St. Vrain River. So geographically, we have an idea here of what this looks like. If you had, multiple stations, you can always look at it tabular or other views of that nature. We can click on, the stations. We have specific properties or measurements that we've highlighted. As this is pertaining to water, we can see the current discharge and stage measurements. But we can always go back to that station and see all the individual measurements that are being sent from that asset. And we've highlighted the discharge and stage. So how can we leverage some of this data, right? Let's look at the Data Explorer application. So we go to the left-hand application bar, we'll click Data Explorer, and we'll start being to manipulate and visualize that data. Right now we're looking at a graph view. I want to start here real quick at the chart. Okay, so I've already brought in my discharge measurements from those four stations within my watershed. However, you can bring in as many different measurements as you'd like from different stations and different networks. It should be noted when you're on the chart view that you're limited to two axes or two measurement properties, right? It could be stage and CFS, air temperature and RH. You can look at more data, but with this map, we're only allowing two axes. As we go further and start looking at dashboards, we allow this up to four axes, and I'll show you some of that configuration here shortly. If you do look at it in the table view, obviously since we're not graphically displaying the data, you can have multiple measurement properties. Okay, so let's just look at our standard time picker. Let's just go back the last 3 days here. So it's going to bring up the last 3 days of discharge measurements from these four stations. Things to point out here, to make it easy, you can easily go back in time. So this will look at every 3 days, since that's what my default station parameter is here. We can always do modify to whatever we want, look at historical data. We make it easily accessible, but I really like to use the kind of quick pick here. We're going to look at the last 7 days because we had some rainfall recently, looks like around March 30th, which impacted our water elevations and discharge measurements. So within this graph, kind of some of the good features that we can do here is the zoom. This looks like some interesting data. We can easily highlight, expand that data to look in more closely. There's also the slider here, so we can easily go back in time and, really figure out how we want to manipulate that data. Some other useful tools is showing the maximums. Okay, I want to know what the maximum discharge measurement was over this little event here. We can see we hit 913 CFS. That happened at 3 a.m. on March 30th. But looking at this data, we see that Left-Hand Creek, this yellow line, right? It's a small tributary. Not much water is flowing through there, so it doesn't really show up well in this graph. So things that we can do is remove, some of these other measurements, and the graph will auto scale to bring in that additional, or auto scale to give more meaning to, that smaller tributary. Let's go ahead and add these back on. So other things to note is you can export this to a CSV, an image file. Depending on the data, you may want to change how your graph looks and feels. So all that's pretty customizable within this Data Explorer. As always, you can, look at that as a table view. And this is if you had, if you want to look at 15 different sensors, the table view where you want to be if you want to easily export that data or use our data export application. The one thing I do want to point out that I think is pretty unique to Campbell Scientific is being able to look at that data in time geographically. So again, we're looking at the last 7 days here. Now we geographically, we know we have Boulder Creek, we have Left-Hand Creek, and then the confluence here that goes through, St. Vrain River. But with this dragger, right? So over time, we can see that those discharge measurements are changing. And as I think we were showing around the 29th or 30th, it started to rain. Here we go. We see the discharge measurements start peaking at 34.8 CFS here. We're 62 CFS at the mouth. But then over time, we can see how that compares. And, now we're at 552, 221 here. So we're able to give geographical reference to your measurements within the Data Explorer widget or application. All right, I'm going to move on to dashboards. So again, in the left-hand application menu, I click dashboards. These are all the dashboards that have been created for this organization. I'm going to focus on some hydrology dashboards. So this is a finished dashboard. We're going to make this full screen just so you guys can all see it better. And from this dashboard, we have, this is a scrolling dashboard with all 4 of those stations. We have a needle component here on the left, and then just a graphical component here on the right. One thing to take note is that the needle component, the maximum is different for every of these stations, right? It's customizable, and that's set to the max recorded flow rate. So if we look here at Left-Hand Creek, we're at 4.83 CFS. The maximum ever recorded was 11 CFS. So, we're just under, half of the maximum flow rate recorded. So giving us just some definition to what the data means, right? Dashboards are completely configurable. Everything from the theme to the style to the branding. So you can 100% customize the dashboard to your application, to your branding, to whatever it may be. So let's take a look here at Boulder Creek at North 75th. What does 4 feet of elevation mean, right? If you're not really familiar with your system, or you're just an operator, you may not know that. So by adding these text fields at action stage is 7.5 feet, minor floodings at 8 feet, it gives definition to that data that you're viewing. Also, what's really unique about our dashboard features is you can expand them. So it gives you the easy way to go into almost like the data viewer within the dashboard to really view and manipulate that data, while also just closing the box. I'm right back in my dashboard mode. There's also a time picker, so our dashboards are reactive. I defaulted to showing the last 3 days. You can default to show 7 days, 30 days, the last hour. But by clicking this, it's automatically going to change what I see on my dashboard, so making them very reactive. But going back to putting meaning to the data. So, we know for Boulder Creek at North 75th that 7.5 feet is an action stage. Okay, well, what about here at Boulder Creek Mouth at, let's say 9.8 feet is a critical elevation? We want to be able to understand that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this close full screen, and I am going to go to our studio editor. So what's also nice, this is saying I've had unsaved changes. Every time you edit a dashboard, it actually saves those revisions. So if you make a mistake, you can go back. And, it's almost like that repeat undo button. But we're going to discard my old changes. I'm in the studio editor now. This is where you really create your dashboards on your canvas. These are all types of different components. I'm not going to go to all of them in depth. I'll show a couple examples of dashboards here in a bit. But what I want to focus on is this component here, this Boulder Creek and Mouth. So if I click this component, I now get the component properties, right? Let's go click on component options. So that brings up, some more configurations of the specific graphing component. It brings up 4 different axes. So right now I'm only concerned about stage, but I mentioned earlier about dashboards being able to have multiple up to 4 axes. You can do that here within here. Let's focus on stage and just kind of show you some of the different things that we can do. Auto scale. Do you want to set to a specific max min on the scale, or do you want to auto scale? Do you want to show minimum, maximum values? Show an average line, really useful. I just want to see what the last 3-day average trend line is. But what I'd like to point out is the show threshold line. So again, let's say that 9.8 feet is a critical elevation. Let's put a threshold line on there, click apply, and then now we have this threshold line. So as if you're an operator, you're bringing up your dashboard to look at things, and it's like, oh, hey, I'm at the spillway. I'm at the bottom of the V-notch weir. Whatever it may be, you can add that data and kind of, that's the word I'm looking for, but the insight of what your data means by adding these different thresholds and being able to customize these components. So I'm going to go back to dashboards real quick and just kind of show you some other examples. So here is a dashboard again for this specific basin or watershed that we're talking about. What's nice about this is we're also bringing in some of it also temperature, wind speed, wind gust information at that location. But what's beautiful about some of our architecture is we allow you to create one dashboard and apply it to multiple stations. That goes back to those measurement properties and classifications I talked about at the asset level. So we have this drop down here. I'm looking at this specific station, but I can easily just click these other stations and the data will auto-populate. So I created one dashboard, but I'm able to apply it to as many stations that I need, so instead of having to create multiple dashboards for each site. And again, dashboards don't need to be station specific. You can bring in data from all your different networks, assets, and so forth. However, just for this in case we're looking at station specific data. I know we're limited on time here, but I'm going to show you just a couple more examples. So using the organizational dropdown, I can look at another organization. Here's another dashboard, just kind of show you the different types of components, windrows plots. There's no rainfall or lightning in here, so not much interesting data, but we're bringing in, live radar. Again, the same concept. We can look at different locations easily with the dropdown. And then also, if you want to those have all been static dashboards where you're not allowed to scroll. But let's say you have a lot of information, you can create scrolling dashboards and bring in all sorts of different types of data into your dashboard. All right. Last thing I do want to talk about is the alerts module. So let's go to alerts. So alerts are, have the ability can be very easy or make them as complex as you want, right? We allow operators, such as greater than, equal than, does not equal, your standard operators, but also and or statements. So you can create an alarm that I only want to get an alarm if, I'm receiving rainfall greater than half an inch per hour from station 1 and station 2. So you can almost do like a basin averaging or more of a basin alarm to know that you have so much water coming in from your upper watershed that may be impacting your downstream rivers and tributaries. And the same concept applies to our alerts module. You can create one alert tied to a measurement classification and append it to as many stations as you want. So you create one alert and apply it. So if you have 100 stations in your network and you want to monitor and be alarmed on low battery voltage, you don't need to create 100 alarms. We can create one single battery alarm and append it to all your stations. So we'll real quickly just show you an example of this. We'll say battery low. Okay, what stations do I want to append it to? I'm just going to say, cool, we're going to throw it to all those stations. All right, what are my trigger conditions? So here's where we set if it's a specific measurement or if it's a measurement classification. So if I choose an individual measurement, that's a specific measurement at a specific station or a classification. So let's do classification and let's put battery and we're going to put this to battery voltage. All right, we click apply. And then here's what it is. So I want to, here are my operators. We'll say less than 12.0 volts. If I wanted to make this more complex, here are my and or conditional statements that I can add. But to keep this simple, just say 12 volts. And then we have some other messages here, of measurement age. I'd like to point out the throttle. So throttle is what's your hold off of sending another alert message? Let's say you want to alarm off of 12 feet of stage elevation, but your water's right around that 12 feet and you're transmitting 5-minute data and it's bouncing up and down. You don't want to be inundated with 100 alarms. So in this case, we can say, hey, send me the alarm and don't send me another one until 6 hours. I got that first alarm, right? Or I need to wait till it clears, or 24 hours. But then what I really want to point out is the alert message. So again, since we're making one alarm and sharing it with multiple stations, we can, create a quick single message here saying, warning, battery is low. Then we can put, what is the station name? So station name is, then we can see the most recent battery reading. And then we can give a timestamp at what is the timestamp? Okay, so we get this message, an example message output. Now this is pulling in dummy data, but we see, warning, battery's low. Station 25 is 68 volts, on March 26th. So it's bringing in the station name, what is its reading, and what is the latest timestamp. So that allows us to create one alert, append it to multiple stations, and with a single message, that'll automatically pull in new data. So very customizable in your aspect of doing alerts. And then, you'd pen the distribution group. Who gets these alarms? That goes back to our organizational settings, where you have complete control of your network. All right, so I threw a lot at everyone. I'm trying to keep this pretty super high level just to give you a taste. I would recommend using their 90-day free trial. Go ahead and set up an organization, push data to it. This should, hopefully with this information, you can at least start using our Campbell Cloud platform. And again, if you have any questions or want to learn more, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're more than happy to schedule a personal demonstration. But on that note, I'm going to hand it back over to Aspen.
Thank you, Scott. Now let's turn the time over to our audience. We've been collecting your questions over the course of this webinar. I'll read the questions that you provided, and then our expert panel will answer. Scott, Tyler, are you ready?
Let's do it.
Perfect.
Let's go.
Great. Okay, the first question that we have is, how do I manage what people have access to within my organization?
All right, yep, I can take that one, Tyler. That is a great question. Let me close out of that PowerPoint. And so here up of our top menu bar, we have security groups under the organizational settings. So if I click security groups, and you can create as many security groups as you want, but let's just take a look at one, for example. All right, so once we're in a security group, you have the applications settings here. So remember, applications are on the left-hand bar. These are, applications from, the dashboards alerts. By allowing people access to that application, it gives them read-only views. And you can limit, maybe people only have the ability to see dashboards. But not only do you allow to see the application, but you can really fine-tune the detail of, can you delete, can you create, can you update? So you have complete control of giving people permissions to do what they need to within the software. And it's all within creating security groups. Again, you can create as many security groups as you want, and then just applying a user to within that security group.
Thank you, Scott. The next question we received is, does this work with Campbell data loggers or only with the Aspen 10?
Sure. I guess I kind of mentioned earlier, right now, all of our modern data loggers, so the CR300 series, that includes the CR300, 310, 350, our CR1000X, CR1000XE, CR6, and then our IoT Aspen 10. In the works is having a link from LoggerNet, so you can be able to push data from legacy data loggers from LoggerNet into Campbell Cloud as well.
I'm also going to jump in and add. I think he was asking, does it only work with Campbell data loggers or the Aspen? So the answer to that question is yes. This is only going to work with Campbell data loggers or the Aspen 10.
Correct.
Okay, and then the final question that we have today is, how does the licensing work? Can only one user use this?
Sure. I'll take it, Tyler. Yeah, so the way that it's set up is a license is per asset. So you pay a per asset subscription, and with that standard subscription per that asset, you get the full access to Campbell Cloud. So you can add as many users as you want, do API calls, right? And that asset is tied to that organization. So then as you add more assets, right, it's ingested to that organization and you pay per asset on an annual basis.
Excellent, thank you. Alrighty, I think that's all the time that we have today. If you have questions that didn't get answered, please contact our sales engineering team for a customized demo at 435-227-9080 or email sales@campbellsci.com. Additionally, our individual contact information is on the screen. We'll all be more than happy to assist you. Before we close out this webinar, we wanted to offer you a 90-day free trial of Campbell Cloud. Go to www.campbell-cloud.com to start your trial or scan the QR code on the screen. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Campbell Scientific, for when your measurements matter.
Thank you, everyone.